Sometimes I wonder if I was just too good at keeping secrets. Looking back now, I can see how 15 years of living two completely different lives might seem impossible to most people, but when you're as naturally gifted at compartmentalization as I am, it becomes second nature. I'm Abigail, and I need to tell you about the most elaborate double life you've ever heard of. One that started with innocent flirtation and ended with me in a hospital bed, my carefully constructed world crashing down around me. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy hearing about real relationship drama, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. I met Carter in college when I was 21, and he was 23. I was absolutely stunning back then, the kind of beautiful that made professors stutter and had guys literally walking into doors when I passed by. Carter was different though. While every other guy in our program was practically drooling over me, he barely seemed to notice. We were both studying in this male-dominated industry, and while I struggled to keep up with the technical aspects, Carter had this natural brilliance that made everything look effortless. The fact that he wasn't chasing me like all the others made him infinitely more interesting. One day after a particularly brutal exam, I approached him about studying together. Between us, I was failing miserably and needed his help, but I played it off like I was doing him a favor. That's how it started, me using my looks to get what I needed, while he genuinely thought we were just study partners. We got married 3 years later, both of us landing entry-level positions in the same field, but at different companies. Here's where things got complicated fast. Carter's career took off like a rocket while mine crashed and burned spectacularly. I switched jobs twice in our first year of marriage, each time thinking the problem was the company culture or my supervisors not appreciating my potential. The truth was, I wasn't cut out for the technical demands of our industry, but I wasn't about to admit that to myself or anyone else. When I got pregnant with Liam during our 3rd year of marriage, I saw it as the perfect escape from my struggling career. I worked through the pregnancy because we needed the money, but a few weeks after giving birth, a routine checkup revealed precancerous cells that required immediate attention. The doctor told us we needed to have more children quickly if we wanted a larger family, as I'd need a hysterectomy within the next few years. Olden was born just 11 months after Liam, and within a year of his birth, I had the surgery. Carter seemed perfectly content with 2 boys, but I was devastated. I'd always pictured myself with a large family, being the kind of mother who was involved in everything. The hysterectomy felt like my femininity had been surgically removed, leaving me feeling incomplete and desperate to prove my worth in other ways. I threw myself into being the perfect stay-at-home mom while Carter's career continued its upward trajectory. He was working 60-hour weeks, traveling for conferences, and bringing home increasingly impressive paychecks. I handled everything domestic: the kids, schedules, household management, social calendar, bills, appointments, grocery shopping, meal planning, everything. Look, I was good at being a mother, but I was also incredibly lonely and underappreciated. Carter would come home exhausted, wolf down whatever dinner I'd prepared, help get the boys ready for bed, and then collapse on the couch. Weekends were family time, which sounds nice in theory, but it was just more of me managing everyone's needs while he got to be the fun parent who showed up for the good parts. Our best friends from college, Joshua and Chelsea, were dealing with their own challenges. They'd had their son around the same time we had Liam, but Chelsea had gone back to work and was killing it in her career, while Joshua had a stable position until the economy tanked in 2001. His entire department got eliminated, and instead of taking just any job or moving to where the work was, he decided to be a stay-at-home dad while he looked for something in his field. That's when Joshua and I started spending more time together. Both of us were home during the day with the kids, and it felt natural to coordinate playdates and activities. Joshua was everything Carter wasn't: attentive, appreciative, actually interested in my thoughts and feelings. While Carter was buried in spreadsheets and client presentations, Joshua would listen to me talk about my dreams and frustrations for hours. I started looking forward to our time together more than I looked forward to Carter coming home. Joshua noticed things about me that Carter had stopped seeing years ago. When I got my hair cut, when I wore a new outfit, when I was feeling overwhelmed or underappreciated. He made me feel like a desirable woman instead of just a household manager and childcare provider. The affair started gradually. Coffee dates while the kids played at the park turned into long conversations at his house after we'd dropped the older kids at school. Chelsea was working 10-hour days and completely oblivious to what was happening in her own home. I felt guilty at first, but the guilt faded as I convinced myself that Carter's emotional neglect had driven me to seek connection elsewhere. Joshua was incredible in bed, passionate and attentive in ways that Carter hadn't been since our honeymoon phase. I started making excuses to see him more often, coordinating our schedules so we could have longer stretches of uninterrupted time together. For about a year, I was living this perfect double life. Devoted mother and wife on the surface, passionate lover in secret. Then Joshua suggested something that changed everything. He had a friend named Cameron who he thought might be interested in joining us for some fun. I was hesitant at first, but the idea of being desired by two men simultaneously was intoxicating. I'd spent years feeling invisible and taken for granted, and here were two attractive men competing for my attention. We arranged to meet at Joshua's house on a Thursday afternoon when Chelsea was at work and all the kids were at school. The experience was unlike anything I'd ever imagined. Feeling completely worshipped and desired, being the center of attention in a way that made me feel powerful and irresistible. Afterward, Cameron mentioned that he usually had to pay for experiences like that and left several $100s on Joshua's kitchen counter. He asked if he could arrange a private session with just me, and something clicked in my brain. Here I was, a beautiful woman with flexible daytime hours, and there were apparently men willing to pay significant money for my company. Joshua and I talked about it extensively over the next few weeks. He'd always been entrepreneurial, and the idea of managing a discreet, high-end service appealed to him. I rationalized it by telling myself I deserved to be compensated for years of being an unpaid domestic worker. Carter got to build his career and earn recognition while I sacrificed my professional ambitions for our family. Why shouldn't I have my own income stream? We developed a sophisticated operation. I rented a storage unit that became my office and wardrobe space, complete with outfits for different types of clients and occasions. I bought a separate car that I kept at the storage facility so my family minivan would never be spotted at hotels. I used a different phone for business communications and established strict boundaries about my availability. I only worked during school hours, never missing a pickup or school event. My clients were all upscale professionals who could afford premium rates and discreet, high-end hotel rooms. I specialized in the girlfriend experience, intelligent conversation, genuine interest in their lives, and intimate encounters that felt more like affairs than transactions. The money was incredible. I was earning more in a few hours than most people made in a week, and it was all mine. I never brought it into our household finances because I didn't want Carter asking questions about sudden windfalls. Instead, I used it for personal expenses and occasionally for things like the boys' expensive summer camps, which I told Carter I was covering by tightening our budget. Joshua eventually found a new job, but he continued managing my business on the side. He handled all the screening, scheduling, and logistics, while I focused on client relations. On the rare occasions when appointments ran long, he'd pick up the boys from school and keep them at his house until I could collect them. For over a decade, I maintained this perfect balance. Carter was completely clueless, too absorbed in his own career advancement to pay attention to the details of my daily routine. I was making excellent money, feeling desired and appreciated, and still fulfilling all my responsibilities as a mother and wife. I felt superior to other stay-at-home moms who were genuinely dependent on their husband's income and approval. I convinced myself that what Carter didn't know couldn't hurt him. Our weekend intimacy was still good, and I was careful never to let my work life interfere with family obligations. I was giving him the perfect family life he wanted, while also taking care of my own needs and financial security. By 2016, Liam was a freshman in college and Holden was a senior in high school. I was at the peak of my career, commanding premium rates and maintaining a select clientele of regular clients who respected my boundaries and treated me well. I felt invincible, like I'd figured out how to have everything: financial independence, sexual fulfillment, and a picture-perfect family life. That's when everything went wrong in the most violent, terrifying way imaginable. I was meeting a new client at an upscale hotel downtown. He'd been referred by one of my regulars and had passed all of Joshua's screening protocols. The meeting started normally: dinner at the hotel restaurant, pleasant conversation, the usual build-up to our private encounter. But once we got to the room, something shifted in his demeanor. He became aggressive and demanding, wanting things I'd explicitly said I didn't provide. When I tried to maintain my boundaries, he became violent. I won't go into all the details, but I ended up with a broken jaw, broken nose, fractured orbital bone, and a concussion that left me barely conscious. The hotel staff found me and called an ambulance. The police took a report, but I was too disoriented from the head injury to give them much useful information. I drifted in and out of consciousness as they worked on me, terrified about what would happen when Carter arrived. Carter got a call from the hospital saying I'd been hurt and needed to come immediately. When he arrived, I was connected to machines, my face swollen beyond recognition. A police officer was just finishing up his paperwork, and a nurse handed Carter a bag containing my belongings: expensive heels and a dress he'd never seen before. I could see the confusion and suspicion in his eyes as he examined the clothes. When he asked the nurse about them, she mentioned they'd been brought from the hotel room, and I watched Carter's expression change as he started putting pieces together. As the pain medication wore off and I became more coherent, I knew I had to tell him something. I started with a partial truth: that I'd been meeting someone and things had gone wrong. But Carter isn't stupid, and he kept asking questions that I couldn't answer without revealing more. Eventually, I had to tell him about the escort business. I tried to minimize Joshua's involvement and completely omitted our affair, but Carter was relentless in his questioning. He wanted to know how long it had been going on, how much money was involved, where I'd been meeting clients, whether I'd been putting our family at risk. The look of devastation and betrayal on his face was almost worse than the physical pain I was experiencing. This man had trusted me completely for 15 years, had never questioned my activities or whereabouts, and I'd been systematically lying to him about the most fundamental aspects of my life. When I was finally released from the hospital, Carter barely spoke to me. He helped me get settled at home and made sure I had everything I needed for recovery. But the warmth and affection that had characterized our relationship was completely gone. During my recovery, Carter called Chelsea and told her everything: about my escort business, about Joshua's role as my manager, and eventually about our affair when I was forced to admit it under his persistent questioning. Chelsea immediately threw Joshua out of their house and filed for divorce. Carter told me our marriage was over and asked me to move out as soon as I was physically able. With nowhere else to go, I moved in with Joshua, who was now also divorced and dealing with his own financial and legal consequences. Both Liam and Holden learned the truth about what their mother had been doing for most of their adolescent years. The disappointment and disgust in their eyes was devastating. These boys who had always looked up to me now saw me as someone they couldn't trust or respect. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Carter had grounds for fault-based divorce, and my hidden income became a major issue in asset division. I had to account for years of undeclared earnings and faced potential tax consequences I'd never considered. 5 years have passed since that night in the hotel, and I'm still living with Joshua in a relationship that's more about mutual destruction than love. We're both bitter, both dealing with the consequences of our choices, both isolated from the friends and family we hurt. Carter has rebuilt his life completely. He has a strong relationship with both boys, who respect him for his integrity and strength in handling an impossible situation. He's successful in his career, financially stable, and from what I hear through mutual acquaintances, genuinely happy. I watch from the sidelines as my former family thrives without me. Liam graduated college with honors and rarely speaks to me. Holden is in his senior year and has made it clear he doesn't want me at his graduation. Carter has become everything I always claimed he wasn't: attentive, emotionally available, and genuinely appreciated by the people who matter most. Look, I can admit that I made some questionable choices. Fine, I had an affair, and I kept secrets about money. But Carter pushed me to those choices by being emotionally unavailable and taking me for granted for years. I was a beautiful, intelligent woman stuck at home while he got all the recognition and career advancement. What did he expect would happen? I gave him 15 years of my life, raised his children, managed his household, and supported his career ambitions. The fact that I found ways to feel appreciated and financially independent shouldn't have been grounds for him to destroy our family. He could have worked with me to fix our problems, instead of immediately running to lawyers and turning our sons against me. The truth is, I was a good mother and a devoted wife who made some mistakes. Carter was too rigid and unforgiving to see past those mistakes to the woman who had sacrificed everything for our family. If he'd been a stronger, more secure man, he could have handled the situation differently. But here's what really gets me. Everyone acts like he's some kind of hero for surviving what I put him through, while I'm treated like I'm completely irredeemable. He gets sympathy and support, while I'm left to deal with the consequences of choices that were driven by years of neglect and emotional abandonment. I'm not the same naive woman who got married at 24 thinking love would be enough. I've learned that men like Carter will take everything you give them and then act shocked when you find ways to take care of yourself. I've learned that no matter how much you sacrifice for a family, they'll turn on you the moment you stop being perfect. Joshua and I are planning to move across the country next year, start fresh somewhere nobody knows our story. I'm done trying to repair relationships with people who refuse to understand that I was just trying to survive in a marriage that had stopped meeting my needs years before I started looking elsewhere. Carter got his perfect ending: the devoted sons, the successful career, the moral high ground. But I know who I really am, and I know what I'm capable of. Maybe it's time I stopped apologizing for being strong enough to create my own opportunities when life didn't give me what I deserved.